All right, so we've got a question here from Maya. She's asking, Steve, I keep underlining basically every sentence in reading comp because I'm scared I'll miss something important. But when I finish, my page looks like a rainbow and I can't remember the passage at all. How are you actually supposed to take notes here? Now, most people approach reading comp like they're in school. They open the passage and they think, okay, it's time to take notes. They start underlining, highlighting, boxing keywords, circling names, and by the end, the page looks something like a Jackson Pollock painting. But the truth is that the best top scorers don't do that. They mark almost nothing and sometimes literally nothing. Why? Because the LSAT is not grading your note taking skills. It's testing your ability to understand and reason through arguments under time pressure. Now, every second you spend writing something down is a second you're not actually reading. You're adding friction to the process, and friction kills comprehension. So, for that reason, when we work with students, one of the first things we do is take the pen out of their hands. Seriously, try reading a passage once without marking anything. At first, it might feel uncomfortable because you're going to want to grab the pen and underline something, anything, just to feel like you're doing something. But here's what happens. After a few passages, your brain starts working the way it's supposed to. You stop chasing random words and you start actually following the logic. Because what really matters in reading comp is structure, not the details, not the examples, not even every viewpoint, just the structure. Who is saying what and why? What's the main claim? What are the opposing sides? And this is key. Where does each piece of information live so you can find it again? You don't need to memorize the passage. You need a mental map. Think of each paragraph like a labeled drawer. Paragraph 1 introduces the topic and sets up the debate. Paragraph 2 shares one side. Paragraph 3 shares the other side. And paragraph 4 maybe reconciles or concludes. Now, you don't have to remember every single fact. You've just got to know where to find those facts when you need to solve a particular question. That is what top scorers do. They know where things are, even if they don't remember exactly what was said. Now, let's talk about marking. There is a time and place for it, but probably not what you think. If you're going to mark at all, do it strategically. Maybe just one or two keywords per paragraph. You know the transition words like however, therefore, and in contrast. Maybe you underline one sentence, the author's main opinion. That is it. You're creating anchors that your brain can grab onto when you go back to answer the questions. And if you're not sure which marking style works best for you, run an experiment. Do 5 passages one way with lots of notes, do 5 passages another way with minimal notes, and do 5 passages with no notes at all. Then look at your results. Which approach gave you the best accuracy per minute? That's going to be your answer. And I know every student's different. Some need light marking to stay focused. Others do better with purely mental mapping. And the key is to test your system instead of guessing. Another thing worth noting is that reading comp is more about engagement than people realize. These passages are boring on purpose by design. They're about 18th century theater or molecular biology or art criticism. Nobody cares. And the test makers know that you don't care. So your job is to make yourself care just enough to stay alert by exaggerating what you read. If there are 2 sides in a passage, pretend that it's a heated argument between your 2 loudest friends. If it's a boring scientific study, imagine it's a courtroom debate. When you inject a little bit of personality into it, your brain's going to stop glazing over. And you've got to know that reading comp is not just about reading. It's about remembering what you read when the questions start messing with you. So as you read, keep your one eye on how you're going to use this information later. Ask yourself, if they ask about the evidence, where would I look? If they ask me about tone, how would I describe it? If they ask me to infer the author's attitude, which lines show it? That's what makes top scorers so efficient. They're not reading passively, they're reading like detectives, gathering evidence for questions they haven't even seen yet. So if you start reading this way, focused on the structure, You'll be shocked at how much easier reading comp becomes. You're going to read faster, understand more, and stop wasting time making the passage look pretty. Because the LSAT isn't testing your note taking, it's testing whether your brain can find and use information under pressure. So forget the highlighter and instead build your mental map. And remember, less marking, more thinking. Now, the next question I've got here is from Jordan asking about study plans. He says, so I made this super detailed 6-month LSAT plan, but I've already fallen behind by 2 weeks, and now everything feels off. Should I start over, delay my test date, or just cram and try to catch up? Now, to be real, I mean, every LSAT student at some point feels like their study plan is falling apart. Maybe you miss a week because of work, maybe you got sick, or maybe you just didn't do it. And then you start feeling guilty. You see your study plan and think about how you just blew it, and maybe you're going to start over next cycle. But a broken plan doesn't mean you're a broken student. It just means your plan wasn't built for real life. Most study plans, even the good ones, are written for a robot. They assume that you have infinite energy, zero distractions, and the perfect work-life balance. But real people have jobs. They get tired. They get invited to weddings. So when your plan starts falling apart, your goal isn't to throw it out. Your goal is to adapt it. And most students react to falling behind by pushing back their test date. But what usually happens is life stays just as busy. And the new schedule, you fall behind on that one too. So if your plan says do 4 sections a day, maybe cut it down to only 2 sections a day and actually finish them. In other words, you're shrinking the scope of what the plan is asking you to do rather than shrinking the length of the plan. Finishing a smaller plan is going to build your confidence and your rhythm. And that is way more valuable than some giant plan that looks impressive but never actually gets done. So we find that working with our students, that just reducing the workload by 25% can actually double the consistency because you stop feeling like you're constantly behind. And I know when you fall behind, your natural instinct is to feel guilty. You open your notebook and immediately start beating yourself up, thinking, I wasted a whole week. I'm never going to catch up. But guilt just tells you that you care, which is good, but it doesn't tell you how to fix anything. So instead of asking why you messed up, just ask, what can I do differently this week? If you usually plan 5 dedicated study blocks, maybe this week you cut it down to 3 dedicated study blocks. If you normally study at night, but you crash, maybe you switch to morning studying. And if weekends just never work, stop pretending they will. Design your plan around who you actually are, not who you wish you were. And if you fell behind for a while, it's tempting to come back swinging and think to yourself, maybe I'll do 2 practice tests this weekend. And you might even pull it off once or twice. But by Monday, you're going to be burned out again. So instead, start off with micro wins. Do 1 timed section today, review 2 logical reasoning questions tomorrow. That's it. Small wins rebuild your confidence. They remind your brain, hey, I can still do this. And once that feeling is back, you start stacking bigger wins. Think of it like going back to the gym after a long break. You don't try to lift what you used to bench your first time back. You pick up something light, you nail your form, and you leave feeling good. That's what gets you coming back. Now, most people track how much they planned to study, but the right metric is actually how many quality hours you did. A perfect plan on paper is worthless if you spend half the session scrolling through your phone. On the flip side, a short week with 3 focused study blocks can move you forward more than a messy 20-hour cram week. So focus on what matters. Did you show up today? Did you finish what you started? And did you review what you got wrong? That's it. If you do those 3 things consistently, your plan is working, even if it doesn't look like it on paper. Now, the worst time to change your plan is right after a bad week or a bad score. That's when you overreact and rebuild everything from scratch. New schedule, new books, new playlists. So I want you to pause and look at the data. Ask yourself, is my plan broken or am I just tired? If it's burnout, fix your rest, not your schedule. If it's truly too much work, simplify. And if you're not learning from your mistakes, add some more time for review. Change one variable at a time. That's how you know what's actually working. Now, here's the mindset shift I want you to have. The point of a study plan is not perfection, it's progress. You don't beat the LSAT by completing a checklist. You win by becoming the kind of person who studies consistently, reviews deeply, and adjusts intelligently. And sometimes that means forgiving yourself for the missed days, cutting your plan down to size, and starting again tomorrow. When we work with students, the ones who end up with 170 and above aren't the ones who follow their plan perfectly. They're the ones who adapted the fastest when life got messy. So the next time you miss a few days, don't spiral, take a breath, reopen your plan, cut it in half if you have to, and keep going. Because you don't need a perfect plan to crush the LSAT. You just need one that survives contact with real life. Next question here is from Alex asking, quote, last week I scored a 164, this week a 158, and I'm freaking out. Does this mean I'm getting worse or is it just random? How do I know where I actually stand right now? What's my real score? Great question here. And this is one of the most common LSAT freakouts. You take a practice test on Sunday, you score 5 points lower than you did last week, and you immediately think, I'm getting worse, I blew it, everything's falling apart. Then you text your friend or post on Reddit, and somebody says, don't worry, you'll bounce back. And that makes you feel better for maybe like 45 seconds. But then you start spiraling again. And the truth is, that one test means nothing. It is a single data point. And single data points lie all the time. You don't want to over index on outliers. If you want to know your real LSAT score, the number that actually reflects your ability right now, you've got to look at the average of your last 5 practice tests. Not your best, not your worst, but your average, the law of averages. Because the LSAT, just like life, is messy. Some days you're sharp, some days you're tired. But the average of your last 5 scores is the truth of where you truly stand. Think of each LSAT like a snapshot. It shows what you did on one particular day under one particular set of conditions. You might have slept badly. The test might have leaned heavier on your weak section, and you might have misbubbled here and there. Whatever it is, a single LSAT is full of randomness. But when you take 5 tests, those random spikes and dips start to even out. That's what gives you a signal instead of noise. When we work with students, we don't even look at individual test scores anymore. We look at trends. If your 5 test average is rising over time, you're improving, even if you had one ugly test in the middle. So if you want to calculate where you truly stand, it's simple. Write down your last 5 scores, add them up, divide by 5. That is your current ability level. Now, if you've been improving steadily, your latest test might still be below your true average. And that's normal because skill building doesn't move in a straight line. Think about it like going to the gym. If you're getting stronger, you might still have the occasional bad workout, but the trend line is what matters, not the single off day when you lifted less. So the next time you score lower than expected, don't panic. Just zoom out and ask, how's my 5 test average trending? If it's moving up, you're fine. You're still building skill. Now, most people will celebrate their best score like it's gospel. They'll say, I hit a 169 once, so I'm basically a 169 scorer. But remember, you're still the average of your last 5. If your scores were 159, 162, 161, 165, and 169, your true range is still around a 163. That is your foundation. And that's where you should be drilling and analyzing. And I know it's fun to tell people your highest score. It feels great, but it can also make you lazy and build a false sense of complacency because that's who you start believing you are every single day. You stop analyzing what made that 169 possible and how to make it repeatable. The real goal is consistency. A 165 5 times in a row is way more powerful than one lucky 172 followed by 4 158s. Now, I know that outliers still do have value, But if you had a weirdly good or weirdly bad test, you want to look at why. For example, did your pacing change? Did you eat something different that morning? Did your warm up routine feel better? Or worse, did you skip your warm up entirely? You want to ID the variables that might have caused that swing, and then you adjust for next time. But after that, you want to move on. Don't let a single score live rent free in your head. We tell our students to treat each LSAT like it's an experiment. Run it, log the data, adjust one variable, and move forward. That's it. And the reason for this law of averages is also about emotional regulation, which, by the way, is half the battle on this exam. Because when you ride that emotional roller coaster of good score means I'm smart and bad score means I'm dumb, you waste energy that you could have been spending on actual improvement. Top scorers will expect that some tests will go poorly. They literally build that assumption into their mindset. That way, when a test does go badly, it doesn't feel like an emergency. It's just part of the data. So, the next time you get a disappointing result, take 5 minutes to feel annoyed. It's totally fine. But then pull up your score log, look at the average, and keep working. Because you don't win the LSAT by crushing one test. You win by being able to perform well over and over again until it feels automatic. The law of averages protects you from both overconfidence and despair. It tells you you're never as bad as your worst day, you're not yet as good as your best one, you are the average of your consistency. And that average moves up over time, slowly, quietly, through repetition and review. And that's the part that nobody posts about online. And I know that it's not flashy, but it's real. There's no I jumped 15 points overnight story here. So I want you to stop treating every LSAT like it's a final verdict. Treat it like another data point on the path to mastery. Because the more you zoom out, the calmer and the better you're going to get.